Governor Abbott has some explaining to do because an explosive new report shows that Texas has been secretly giving its citizens' income to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. So the Texas Workforce Commission shared with the Epoch Times that it shared at least one person's income with the ATF without a warrant through the federal gun background system. And I know one of our representatives here, Briscoe Kane, he said his office will be looking into whether the TWC is assisting the ATF in the Biden administration's, attempt to circumvent any legal way to. I mean, they clearly want to take your guns, and they're going to go through all of these, back doors to try to do it. But this is very alarming because not only are they, so what's happening, Jason, I know you know this story very well. I'll let you correct me if I'm wrong. But what's happening is people's incomes are being shared with the ATF, who then have the ability to put you on a list to look into hold on, you're only making $25,000. Why are you purchasing a $8,000 weapon? And then they look into you and put you on a list because they think that they have the ability to, tell whether or not you have the capability of purchasing a weapon. I mean, you could have had money gifted to you. You could have, just be very irresponsible and recklessly spend. You could be racking up debt on a credit card. You could have savings. For any reason, who cares? It is your right to purchase the gun legally. Thank you, Blake.
You're welcome.
Sorry about that. Do I have that right?
You got it right, and it's actually worse than what you're describing because it exposes.
Oh, I cursed too soon.
You cursed too soon. So think about how would they even know that you purchased these firearms? Well, that's because once everyone probably watched the show has bought a gun before, you go through the NICS system, the background system to do that. That's how they're doing it. So, we essentially help the government build the background system. I don't know what I hate the background system. I absolutely hate it because, again, it's a constitutionally protected right. There's other ways after the fact. If criminals committed a crime, they have a gun, then you can do something about it after they commit a crime. But what we built for them is a gun registry. That's what we built for them. The NRA, who they love to vilify, they wouldn't have it if it wasn't for the NRA. What the system they have now, they would not have that if not for the NRA. But so basically,
aren't they supposed to get rid of your information after they run it through the system? Don't they say that that's what they do?
That I don't know.
They might be supposed to, but when does anyone do what they're supposed to do? We're supposed to have a constitution. Yeah. We're supposed to be a country governed by laws and have our rights protected. But
why would the government give up that information? They're going to hold on to that as long as they can. But basically, let's say if Blake bought 5 guns, then they run it through NICS and they're like, okay, Blake just bought 5 guns. Let's see if his income supports that.
I don't make nearly enough money to buy 5 guns at any time. I'll tell you that much right now. But
so then they're querying these state organizations. Like TWC, and they're saying, hey, how much money does he make? I cannot believe, you would need a warrant or something like that to make that request. But what this is alleging is they're just gleefully giving it up. Like AT&T, Verizon, or, Apple or whatever. If they just said, hey, we think this person might be a little, nutso, can you give us all his direct messages? Sure, why not? Forget the fact that you don't have a warrant to ask that information. Yeah. This is deeply troubling on multiple different levels, and we're supposed to be like a Second Amendment, sanctuary state.
Yep.
Right.
Are we or aren't we?
No.
Has the government even? I know that I think it was the Epoch Times where I read this. I know they reached out to TWC, but I don't know if they actually reached out to Ken Paxton's office, if they reached out to Governor Abbott's office. I would love to hear their comment on this. So there needs to be a response to this.
Absolutely.
Since moving to Texas, I've had to ask myself on multiple occasions, on a variety of topics, how is this able to happen in Texas? Number 1, probably the border. Number 2, the drag shows. Number 3, Jeff Younger, good friend of mine, had his kids taken away from him to be trans, and now this situation. And the answer is that Texas, for some reason, this might be like a cursed state, I don't know, but the Republicans in Texas may just be the worst Republicans in the entire country. And my 2 best examples for this are Greg Abbott and Dade Phelan, the governor and the Republican Speaker of the Texas State House, both accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from gender clinics that transition children. So No one's really, it appears to be that no one is really on our side, regardless of their political party in this state.
And I feel like a lot of that, I want to play a clip here of the director of the ATF, but I think a lot, to speak to your point about Texas, I think a lot of that is because Texas for so long had everyone thought of Texas as just the deep red, the red state. And so nobody paid attention. Everybody kind of neglected looking into who they were voting for, looking into what those representatives were actually doing when they were in the legislature, because they're not always in the legislature. And I feel like they just kind of a lot of Texans took it for granted. How many times have you had the term, oh, Texas will never turn blue, right? And they just took it for granted, and they slept. They're sleeping on it, and then all of a sudden, all of these activists come in and, start transforming your deep red state. That's how that happens.
Yeah, Texas, Texas being the red state, which is probably Florida now, but Texas being such a strong red state is kind of an anomaly. It's a modern anomaly because it was always blue for the longest time. People don't remember that. Like, I remember one of the greatest governors considered at the time when I was a kid was K. Bailey Hutchinson, which was a hardcore Democrat. But yeah, so this is relatively new, and I think institutions are probably still heavily infiltrated with that history. Places like TWC, or just think about how jacked up the federal bureaucracy is now, and how you can't get these lifelong politicians out of those. The way the bureaucracy works right now, there's over 400 agencies in federal bureaucracy. Wow. Over 400. That's why you can get a President Trump, you can get a Republican Senate and a Republican House, and nothing changes. Yeah. Not only that, but they impeach him twice and then raid his home and then indict him in New York. Right. That's how that happens because of the bureaucracy. And it's the same in places like Texas. That's why you can't just focus on the big time elections. Yep. You got to go down to the school board. You got to go all the way down to as far down as you can and go through those avenues, because if you ignore it, Texas will turn blue.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I want to play on the subject of ATF. I want to play the ATF's director, Steve Dettelbach, who was asked a very simple question.
It's a dope name, though.
Yesterday. Do you think?
It's the way Sarah says things sometimes. It cracks me up.
Dettelbach.
I obviously can't say anything. I can't talk. I'll just shrink back into the
Yeah, Jason's last name is Buttrell, so he can't say anything. But he was asked a very simple question yesterday about firearms, and he could not provide the answer. Once again, nobody seems to be an expert on the things they're supposed to be an expert on in government. Watch.
As a gun owner of many different types and a 20-year military veteran, I have some expertise in weaponry and self-defense weapons. What could you, in 15 seconds, would you define an assault weapon for me?
So
if you go past 15 seconds, I'll just interrupt you.
Yeah, so I'll go shorter than that, because I honestly do think if Congress wishes to take that up, I think Congress would have to do the work, but we would be there to provide technical assistance. Unlike you, I'm not a firearms expert to the same extent as you may be, but we have people at ATF who can talk about velocity of firearms, what damage different kinds of firearms cause, so that whatever determination you chose to make would be an informed one.
Oh, good. So the guy who's in charge of regulating firearms has no idea, cannot answer what an assault weapon is. I'm not sure if he understands that the F in ATF literally stands for firearms, and he's supposed to understand. Well, but I mean, I guess by their definition, every single gun is an assault weapon, because if you have a gun that can't hurt someone, you've got the wrong gun.
So for more context, this is the organization that Biden is now using to essentially write new gun laws.
Yes.
That's these guys.
But he's not a firearms expert.
He's not a firearms expert, but he's going to write some gun laws. This is amazing. I tell you what.
I just broke Jason's brain.
You did break my brain. It's because every day I'm like, I teeter back and forth, where I'm like, the Second Amendment will be fine. But then I'm like, well, is it going to be when they can use people like that to just basically end around the Second Amendment?
Yep.
So we had they had OSHA do the dirty work for Biden when they wanted to mandate vaccines. That's who they went through. Now they're just going through the ATF to do this. Like I said, 400 agencies in this government. That's a lot of weaponry that they can, figurative weaponry that they can use to just completely obliterate the Constitution.
I think the Second Amendment will be fine, but I don't think that means that we will be fine. I think the culture of gun ownership is sort of dying. It's becoming a much more mainstream idea that guns are evil, guns are bad. And regardless of if the Democrats do anything to actually take our guns, I feel like less and less people will continue to own guns. And like we saw with COVID, they don't need to take our guns to completely destroy our lives and take away all of our freedoms.
I don't know, man. So with the pistol stabilizing law rule, whatever you want to call it, they did. Like, they made me a felon right there.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more millions of people.
New felons.
Yeah. But it's like, with him asking that question is actually very, very essential to this. Because if your definition of assault rifle is certain amount of capacity for a magazine or attachments, on the weapon, well, they can slowly do more of these rules to outlaw more and more weapons. To where eventually, you'll only be able to have a shotgun with a permit or whatever, or a 6-shooter with a permit.
Right.
And do we have a Second Amendment? Just in name only at that point?
Right. Well, yeah, because the last time I saw when they got close enough to passing any sort of assault weapons ban, the last time I saw, and they actually had a list of all of the guns that would be banned on that. At the time, the only gun that I had was a little baby .380 that I used to, for my everyday carry. So that was on the list. I know, it was. It's like a little mini gun. But that was on the list, right? Wow. And so they always use these terms they always use these terms like assault weapon and assault weapons ban. And, and then when you look at what they're actually defining it as, it's, Jason, as you mentioned, you're stuck with either a revolver or a shotgun, I guess. Yeah. Until they come for that next.
With the way they talk about it, it sounds like if anything is semi-automatic, that will eventually be grouped into assault weapons.
Because as this dork pointed out, I saved edit from having to bleep me again, because as this guy points out, well, I'm not a firearms expert, because we've got a whole bunch of people running the show who don't know jack about guns. They don't know jack about what semi-automatic means. They think that they don't know the difference. And so you hear so many people on Twitter all the time who are conflating semi-automatic with automatic weapons. Yeah. As if they're at all the same thing. They have no idea what they're talking about. It's same thing with almost every other thing that they pass. Obamacare, you had a bunch of jerk-offs in Washington, D.C. who don't know jack about the insurance industry, passing all of these rules and regulations for the insurance industry that completely, blew it up. So it's just all of these, nobody's an expert. Yeah, no kidding, that's the freaking problem. None of you are experts about any of this, yet you have no problem making these rules and regulations for this said category that we all have to live by, and you don't even know what the hell you're doing.